Anyone who's struggling for Allah, Allah has taken it upon Himself to cover their faults. What is the Muslim culture of today? Anyone who's struggling for anything in Islam, you will find family, friends, society, and other Islamic people dedicated to finding what? Their faults. So, يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ, Allah is saying, look, even though you're struggling for something high, you're trying to do something noble, you are going to make mistakes, you are going to be sinful. This is a critical lesson for every Muslim here and us as a community and as families. When someone's struggling for Islam, a woman decides to start wearing hijab or starts praying, or a man decides to start learning their religion or makes some change, gives up alcohol, something. They did something, they took a step towards Allah. They made some kind of hijrah towards Allah. All of a sudden people say, oh, I thought you became Islamic and you still have a temper? And you still did this? And you still, like, I thought you stepped out of humanity into the angelic realm. How are you still human? I don't understand this. I thought you're religious. What happened to your Islam? Making mistakes, are we? Still human, are we? Huh. These Islamics, you know what that is? There's an expectation created that now that you're taking your religion seriously in some way, then all of a sudden you are the ultimate ambassador of Islam in all things. And you are not capable of any fault. You can't end up accidentally backbiting somebody. You can't end up missing a prayer. You can't end up, making a mistake here, there, slipping up here and there, having a fault. You can't do that. You know you can't, because you're supposed to be the Islamic one. In other words, you can't have dhunub. You can't have dhunub. The Sahaba, about whom Allah says Allah is happy with them and they are happy with Allah. Allah is content with them and they are content with Allah. And Allah is talking to them and saying, you need to save yourself from hell. And if you do this, if you struggle for this cause and keep renewing your commitment to the struggle and keep renewing your faith, even though Sahabi needs to keep renewing their faith. Nobody came into the faith and all of a sudden their faith is constant. So for you to think some girl started wearing the hijab and now her faith is constant because she's wearing the hijab, so Islam is as permanent as the cotton on her head, then you have a psychotic disorder and you're violating a wisdom of the Quran. You should be ashamed of yourself. This is not an expectation we put on anybody. يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. Allah will continue to forgive your sin. He didn't even say them. He said dhunub. You have many faults. You have many faults and they'll continue. And I'm not endorsing haram behavior, but did you know Sahaba, even at the time of Umar, some of them had a drinking problem? Some of the Sahaba, we call them Sahaba, they had a drinking problem. That was a reality. And that's not the only one. There were other problems. They were struggling with stuff. Some people have different weaknesses. Not everybody is the same. And the plural of the word dhunub also suggests, I have different weaknesses, you have different weaknesses, this one has different weaknesses, those ones. It's easy to find someone's weaknesses, right? And say, aha, I found a weakness, therefore their Islam, right? But Allah says, no, I will cover your faults. You struggle for this. And the hikmah, the corollary from this is so powerful. Allah is saying, anyone who's struggling for Allah, Allah has taken it upon Himself to cover their faults. Listen to that again and think about what that means for you. Anyone who's struggling for Allah, Allah has taken it upon Himself to cover their faults. What is the Muslim culture of today? Anyone who's struggling for anything in Islam, you will find family, friends, society, and other Islamic people dedicated to finding what? Their faults. Here Allah is promising, I'll cover your faults, and here we are busy dedicating entire YouTube channels to exposing faults. Somebody needs to say this. No, actually, only Shaitan needed to say this. Nobody else needed to say this. What happened to man satara mu'minan satarahu Allah yawm al-qiyamah? And if you're saying some people need to be held to a higher standard, I don't think anybody should be held to a higher standard than the Sahaba. Am I wrong in that? If you're thinking somebody should be held to a higher standard than the companions of the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then please educate me. I'd love to know. يغفر لكم ذنوبكم. And from what we love, Allah loves for us, based on His attributes. Allah is Ar-Rahman, so He likes us to have Rahmah, right? And Allah is Al-Ghafur, so He likes us to what? Forgive. Allah is Al-Hakim, He wants us to seek wisdom. Allah is Al-Hadi, He wants us to seek guidance. Allah is Al-Alim, He wants us to seek knowledge. Allah is Al-Adal, He wants us to be just. Isn't that the case? If Allah is Ghafur, the coverer of faults, Allah is Ghafur, what does He want us to be? A personality quality that we should have. A personality, like part of my personality. Just like part of my personality should be care, love, justice, thoughtfulness, seeking knowledge. A part of my personality should be covering what? And I didn't say forgiveness. I didn't say forgiveness. What did I say? Covering faults. Because something may not be forgivable, but that still doesn't mean it needs to be uncovered. Justice is something else. Afu is closer to forgiveness. Afu is closer to forgiveness. خذ العفو. Right? But maghfirah is covering the fault. That this is a kind of satr. Man satara mu'minan satarahu Allah yawm al-qiyamah. Whoever covers a believer, Allah will cover them on Judgment Day. Right? That's another piece of it. These are things that Allah just mentions in passing sometimes, but if you stop and contemplate them, you say, Ya Allah, you're offering me this in Jannah, and I'm making sure fellow believers, fellow human beings are stripped of this in this dunya. And how am I expecting you to give me this in Jannah when I don't even want someone to have even a glimpse of this in this dunya? وَيُدْخِلْكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارِ, and after that He shall enter you into gardens at the bottoms of which rivers flow. So gardens are now being described. They seem to be in a high place because underneath them there are rivers. So this is the imagery of mountaintop, forest-like, gardens. And when you go there, you're above the waterfall. So though you're not under the waterfall, you're over the waterfall. The waterfall is under your feet. It's coming from, and you have this elevation above. Jannatin tajri min taht. By the way, this is like the richest of the rich, right? And Allah is talking in the moment to the poorest of the poor. Like Arabia, Hijaz at the time is the poorest region known. And these people are poorer than the poor. And Allah is offering them, but even though you would think they're poor, so Allah will offer them riches, the biggest rich He offered them is they will save themselves and they'll be forgiven. That was a bigger reward than this. يَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ is muqaddam. It came first. And this is mu'akhar. This is later. Oh, and also Jannah. وَيُدْخِلْكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارِ. And the yudkhil is also, it's so beautiful. Allah could have said He'll give you Jannat, right? But He said He will enter you. In other words, it's as if Allah is walking you in. It's as if Allah is rolling out the red carpet. Allah is doing that for you. Allah is giving the welcome. Yudkhilukum. It's one thing that you open the door for someone and you allow them to go in. It's another when a guest comes and you come out to the car and you say, let me have you come into the house. Please come in. And you sort of walk them in. Allah says, I will have them walked into heaven. يُدْخِلْكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارِ. And that would have been enough. And that sounds pretty nice. But Allah adds, no, not done yet. وَمَسَاكِنَ طَيِّبَةً. And beautiful homes. And the word masakin, man, I tell you, when translation falls short, this is one of them places where translation, it falls short. I'll tell you about masakin later. I'll tell you about tayyiba first. The word tayyib, I'll come back to that. Al-tayyib, ma yutatayyibu bihi. Perfume is tayyib. Perfume, you smell it. Wow, that's good. And your pupils dilate and your senses open up. That kind of perfume, not the kind that the brother gives you at Jumu'ah. He wants to put the allergy oud on you, right? You ever know that? It's almost a weirdo that's like, why does every masjid have that on the planet? There's one guy that's just marking everyone. Ma'un tayyib, water that's sweet, like fresh waterfall water. You just literally just take it from there. That reminds me, you know, a lot of water companies, they have these plastic bottles and they have pictures of waterfalls on them, right? I was in Pakistan, no joke. And I was in Pakistan, I was at a hotel and I was about to open up a bottle of water. And the guy next to me, Hashir, I love this kid. He says, stop. I was like, why? He said, I have to do the Kiddick test. I was like, what? He said it again. I have to do the Kiddick test. It's like, what's the Kiddick test? What's Kiddick? And then he twists the bottle and he's listening for the sound. Kiddick. He goes, no, this is not good. Let me get another one. Kiddick. And he gives me that one. He goes, tell me what you just did. He goes, there's a big thing going on in Pakistan. They figured out a way to just fill the water with the local like creek. And then they just glue it on. And if it doesn't go, crick, so they have the crick test. So if you go to Pakistan, just letting you know, do the crick test. Okay. So Ma'un Tayyib, actually fresh water. Delicious water. Amazing. ما طعام طيب يستلذ الآكل طعمه. You know, sometimes you eat food and it's like, I wish that animal didn't have to die. Because it didn't die for a good cause. You know? And sometimes you just bite into a chicken shawarma and you're like, this chicken deserved it. It died for a good cause. This was worth, yeah. When you bite into food and it's just, oh my God, that is called ta'amun tayyib. The perfume that just illuminates your senses. The food that just, oh my God, a taste of heaven, you know? Ardun tayyib, land that's just perfect. And rihun tayyiba, the perfect breeze on the beach. The perfect breeze on the, oh my God, it's so nice, right? No pollen, not Michigan, no pollen, not Ohio. And not Texas either, where we got like a little glimpse of Jahannam every year, like the summer. Like, not that. I'm talking about like super, not cold, not hot, just the perfect breeze. And if you've ever experienced that, then you know you just don't want it to stop, right? And so, and then they say, you know, nakhatun tayyiba laysa fiha natn. If you have food or a meal that didn't have any aftertaste, it didn't have any, like it didn't make you burp and things like that, and it didn't have a smell. And they use this for a kalima tayyiba. If you hear something, like you hear poetry or you hear somebody's words or you hear something, and you're like, wow, that was nice. What does tayyib have to do with? Tayyib has to do with the sensation of joy coming from any of your senses. Joy coming from any of your senses becomes tayyib. So they translate this as good, but this is more than good. This is joy, the joy of smell, the joy of sound, the joy of words, the joy of food, the joy of a breeze. What's in common in all of them? Joy. It's just a splendid experience. Now Allah says, masakina tayyiba, homes that will be tayyiba. By the way, everything halal, you know what Allah calls it? Tayyib. Kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiban. Now just comprehend what Allah is saying about the halal and what the halal is supposed to be. The halal is supposed to be, is meant to be tayyib. In a sense, it's actually supposed to give us a glimpse of Jannah. Because in Jannah we have masakin al-tayyiba, right? Now, let's talk about masakin. Masakin is translated as homes. But the word masakin comes from sikin. Sikin in the Arabic is a knife. And istiqrarun fi jawfi, and sukun is actually food that rests inside, nourishing food. When you eat, not to your fill, but enough to just feel right. If you eat any more than that, you're going to have the Ramadan syndrome, right? The iftar syndrome, right? Just the right amount. That's called sukun, meaning you're at rest when you eat that much. That's enough. استقرار في جوف حيز أو باطن كالقوت في الجوف كهمود ما يذبح بالسكين في مكانه. So when something calms down and settles, by the way, even someone who's sakin is someone who's not moving. When the night becomes still and calm, that's the sukunul layl, right? وَمَا سَكَنَ فِي الlayl, right? This is how Allah describes it. Now, from it came the idea of a second, meaning your home, because you find relaxation in it. You calm yourself in it. You stop moving. You're not agitated in your home. Now, if I mean, well, I travel a lot, as you might guess, and it gets exhausting. At some point, you're just like, I don't want to see the inside of a hotel room. I just want to go home, right? And then you go home, and you're like, okay, now what do I do? Right? You can settle in, but you can only settle in so much before you say, gotta do something. Gotta do something, right? Now the thing with the addition of tayyiba with masakin is really cool. You're gonna be at home, and people usually do something to they leave home or they do something else to find the experience of joy, because the home is where you're used to things. Home is your calm. Home is not your joy. Home is not your excitement. Home is not your wow. Home is your normal. You're stable. And Allah says, I'm going to make your stable into your wow, right? I'm going to make your masakin into your tayyiba, right? So you know what people say, what are we doing tonight? We're going to go eat, at barbecue Thursdays, right? I don't want to endorse a restaurant. So I'll make up names, okay? Shawarma royalty? We're going to shawarma royalty? And there's an excitement. Imagine that you're just sitting on, there's just the act of sitting on the couch in Jannah is the most, oh my God, the couch! And then the food that's coming and all of that. And then there's interesting variety here. You know, some narrations will describe that a single home will Jannah will have 70 meals and 70 rooms and 70 different kinds of company and 70 this and 70, like it's not an apartment. It's not just upstairs and downstairs. There's a lot of up to the upstairs and there's a lot of down to the downstairs and there's a lot of places. This place is big. And Allah says, Masakina tayyiba. He already mentioned gardens, right? As if to say there's gardens, but actually there's another road in the garden. And when you take that garden, then you're going to go to your home. So the garden, even though you saw a palace down here, that's not, no, there's something more. And then he mentioned Jannat again. Fi Jannati Adn. Was Jannat already mentioned? So you're in the garden, and now you're going up, and there's yet another garden, and that's called the Garden of Aden. The Bible calls it the Garden of Eden. From what I know so far, the Garden of Eden is only mentioned in the story of the fall. Like Adam was kicked out of the Garden of Eden, right? That's where it's used. The Quran doesn't use it like that. But interestingly, that word in its non-Arabic etymology, Eden, actually refers to pleasure, the garden of pleasures. But the pleasures have already been covered here in what words? طيبة. طيبة. مساكن طيبة في جنات عدن. ذلك الفوز العظيم. I'll tell you, so I don't know if I put notes on Aden. Yeah. Here's something about Aden. أن تلزم الإبل المكان فتألفه ولا تبرح. When a camel, sometimes camels remind me of some people, but a camel, when it sits down in a place where it's totally comfortable and it's not going to move now. Like they have a word for this, they have a phrase for this in Urdu. Ab baith gaye to baith gaye. Can you get me some water? Gonna pretend I didn't hear that. The camel is just, it's settled, it is where it is. That is actually Aden. Aden is the idea, like I'm here, I just don't want to go anywhere. Al-istiqrar wa thabat. Like you're just settled, you're relaxed, you don't want to go anywhere else. So Allah says above that, so with Jannati Adn, there's joys and joys and joys, but then Masakin Tayyiba fi Jannati Adn, in a place where you're just never going to want to leave. We're just going to want to stay. You're going to be like that camel that's just chilling like a villain. That's what's going to happen with you. Okay? ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. And this is probably the one of the most amazing things, by the way. I'll read this to you. There's also a sense of being within the gardens that are within gardens that are within gardens. There are layers upon layers of never-ending bliss. The immense serenity and security contrast with the lack of security that comes with being in battle. They were in battle, and you're vulnerable, and here you are up in the mountains, all your own, and then further up, even more secure, right? And military life completely different from civilian life. The idea of chilling in your home and everything's available and all the food is there and you're completely safe and no disturbance is the opposite of the state of war. The surah is about preparing for a state of war, and it's describing the ultimate state of peace as the reward. This is such a really beautiful contrast. وَلِأَنَّ فِي الْجِهَادِ مُفَارَقَةَ مَسَاكِنِهِمْ. And some scholars even said, and this was mentioned because they had to leave their homes to go to war. Right? It required leaving. And some of the muhajirun, even when they didn't go to war, they had left their home in Mecca. And Allah says, I've got a home for you. And this is a home you'll never have to leave and you'll never want to leave. وَمَسَاكِنَ طَيِّبَةً فِي جَنَّاتِ عَدْنٍ. Now we get to Fawz. Oof. Fawz is translated success. They translate that is the ultimate success. ذلك الفوز العظيم. The word فوز عبور مسافة قفر جافة بالغة الامتداد فكذلك الفلات. When someone crosses a desert, they have experienced فوز. They survived. Meaning, when you get into a desert, every expectation was what? You would die. And someone got through the entire desert on the other end, they are called a faiz, the survivor. They've succeeded the test. Everything was out to destroy them, and they survived. This is the imagery that we started with. Shall I tell you of a deal that will save you from a painful punishment or painful torture? Remember that? And ultimate deprivation. You know, the most amazing image of deprivation is being in the desert. You're completely deprived of all things. Water, cover, right? Food, company, direction. You have nothing. Ultimate deprivation. And Allah is now comparing my life, your life, without this escape path. Right now, as you are in the desert. And follow this path, and you will be from those who made it across the desert. And that is an amazing cross. That is an amazing cross across the desert. ويلحظ أن الاسم على صيغة اسم المكان فهي موضع ذلك كان تأويل اسمها ما يقتضي العبور أي الاستعداد له to cross it and to have the means to do so. وعبور الصحراء and to cross the desert in its entirety. وهو نظيرها من مظان الهلاك. That's why this word was used also in the meaning of death. وخلوص وقالوا الفوز النجاة. They used to say al-fawz actually means rescue. And the opposite of what was used, فوز الرجل مات. They would say somebody died in the desert, they didn't get through, فوز. They didn't get to have fawz. So it's لغة الأضداد, right? It's called salb in Arabic, when you use the same word for the opposite meaning. So Allah says that is the escape. So now it's so cool that Allah described crossing a desert, but the imagery was that of a mountain and guarded, the opposite of desert, right? Work towards that, and that's the only way you'll cross this desert. Life is now being described as a desert if it has no purpose. If it is without تؤمنون بالله ورسوله وتجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالكم وأنفسكم. You're just wandering in the desert. You don't even know how lost in the desert you are. And by the way, this imagery occurs again in the Quran. Allah says, أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّهُمْ فِي كُلِّ وَادٍ يَهِيمُونَ. He talks about entertainers, poets, and says they venture into every valley. But the word yahimun is used for a camel that got lost in the desert and is looking for water. Right? And he describes them that way. SubhanAllah. May Allah keep us from that him. And by the way, that one of the punishments in Jahannam is وَفَشَارِبُونَ شُرْبَ الْهِيمِ. They're going to drink the drink of him. Him is again the wandering of the desert of the camel. That's how they'll feel in Jahannam. May Allah protect us all from Jahannam. So he says, he'll enter us into these beautiful homes, ay tahiratan, these homes will be pure, zakiyatan, mustalidha, they'll be so wonderful to enjoy. وَهَذَا إِشَارَةٌ إِلَى حُسْنِهَا بِذَاتِهَا. And this is enough to tell us how beautiful they will be on their own. وَقَوْلُهُ تَعَالَى فِي جَنَّاتِ عَدْنٍ إِشَارَةٌ إِلَى حُسْنِهَا بِاعْتِبَارِ مَحَلِّهَا. But then there's another beauty of the neighborhood. Because you can have a beautiful house in an ugly neighborhood. Just come to Texas, I'll show you. Right? You can have beautiful homes in ugly neighborhoods, right? Like Qarun. Qarun had a palace in the middle of the Israelite encampment in the ghettos. Because he's the only rich guy. So he built himself like a palace in the ghettos, right? Like he was right next to like a liquor store and right next to like, you know, that's where he built his palace. But in real estate, it doesn't matter how nice the house is. What's first? They say location, location, location. So Allah already described the nice house, masakin tayyiba. That's not enough. We got to talk about location too, right? So what's location? Fi jannati. Okay. Wow, the house is nice and the location is nice. I've been involved in real estate for some time. You can have the most beautiful home in the ugly neighborhood, and it's cheap. And you can have the ugliest home in an expensive neighborhood. Like you can have the ugliest apartment in San Francisco, or the most horrible looking, wretched, like you wouldn't want your dog or your dead cat to live there, apartment in New York City, and it's more expensive than the beautiful home in the middle of nowhere, right? There's not even a comparison. Why? Location determines the price. And then on top of all of that, oh my God, if your place has a view, if you're booking a hotel and your hotel window overlooks the AC from the other building, or your hotel window overlooks the sea, the other side, which hotel room are they going to charge you triple the price for? Because of the view. The Quran is describing these homes get higher up, don't they? So you're getting the most beautiful homes in the most beautiful location, and one of the most spectacular features of the location is all 360 degrees is a view, because you are up above in Jannati Aden, right? It's top of the mountain, mansion atop the hill. Everything else is in the view. ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. Hey guys, you just watched a short clip from this surah. What I want you to do now is go through the entire surah with me. It's called the Deeper Look series, and you can catch it on bayinatv.com under the Deeper Look section. So get started.